We're going to move on to the education groups. These were determined by comparing the students' entire pattern of basic interests to the interest patterns of college students enrolled in the education programs listed below. So there are a set of 17 different types or genres of programs, and again, your student's entire profile is compared to the entire profile of students enrolled in these areas. The results are based on analyses of interest profiles of 10,000 university students. And as you can see, the clusters are quite broad, but you can get more specific information in terms of sample majors if you scroll to the bottom of the page here. These different sample majors can be great discussion points to start with your student in terms of what areas they might want to pursue in post-secondary study. The main purpose of this page is to help the student understand what type of training or education program might suit them best. We're going to look at some of my scores as an example, because what you're going to want to do is compare and see patterns across the basic interests, the education groups, and the job groups, all three of these different sections of the report. And for me, we're going to use science as an example. My science score is in the dissimilar range. So the bar is red, it's pointing to the left. So what that means is I don't share the same pattern, overall pattern of interest with science students. So to explore that in a little bit more depth, we're going to look at my basic interests. So one thing that might seem puzzling at first glance is that my life science score is in the 79th percentile, which is relatively high. However, that is just one piece of the puzzle. There are a lot of different basic interests that are combined to generate the education group science score. So for example, my high interest in law probably, if I were to hazard a guess, does not really match with the interests of the typical science student. So there's an area right there that kind of brings down my score. And similarly, I don't have very high scores on things like engineering and physical science, which are probably also areas that the typical science student does show a lot of interest in. So what this illustrates is that you can't look at one score independently, such as the life science score. You have to remember that it is the entire profile of basic interests that are compared to the entire profiles from science students. So this can have some implications for education planning. For example, if I were to tell you that I was seriously interested in entering a science type field after I graduate from high school, you might, as the counselor, point out that my interests are not that similar to that of a science student. So perhaps a better avenue for me would be to consider a more applied or hands-on alternative rather than follow the college stream.